Hey everybody, it's Dr. Franklin and thank you for pressing play. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about conflict in intimate relationships. Interpersonal conflicts occur whenever one's personal motives, goals, beliefs, opinions, or behaviors interfere with or are incompatible with those of another. Specifically, as it relates to intimate relationships, conflict occurs when one's wishes or actions actually obstruct or impede those of their partners. Now, sometimes conflicts are overt, they're conspicuous, they're easily recognizable, and other times we are not aware of the difficulties we are causing our partners. Conflict is unavoidable in relationships because partners will always have opposing motivations. Another word for this is dialectics. And these opposing motivations can never be satisfied because they contradict each other by nature, and moods and preferences of any two people will occasionally differ. A simple example of this is our desire for interdependence and autonomy. On one end, we want a degree of independence. We want to do our own thing, follow our own heart, our passions, our wills, etc. And on the other end, we desire warm and close connections to others that are fostered by mutual goals. These are in direct contradiction, so often partners will swing back and forth as they come to be more influenced by whichever motive has been less fulfilled as of late. The other dialectics involve openness versus closeness, stability versus change, and integration versus separation from one's social network. These dialectics have accounted for at least a third of recent fights and arguments in married couples' relationships. Sooner or later, conflict is going to rear its head in an intimate relationship. Now, your next question may be, how frequently do individuals in intimate relationships engage in conflict? Well, that depends on several factors. For example, individuals high in the personality trait neuroticism tend to have more instances of conflict than individuals low in neuroticism or high in agreeableness. Conflict tends to rise from teenage years to mid 20s, but afterward tends to go on a downward trend thanks to more stability. Parents have been shown to engage in conflict with their 4-year-old children every 3.6 minutes. I thank God that I don't have that problem. Married couples expressed at least 7 differences of opinion across a 2 week span, and they expressed at least 2 memorable disagreements over the past month. A lack of sleep increases the likelihood of conflict, and alcohol consumption doesn't decrease the likelihood, but it actually increases the likelihood that conflict is going to occur, and it exacerbates conflict. As far as attachment styles, secure people tend to have less conflicts than individuals who are anxious about being abandoned. So, what exactly are some of the events that bring about conflict? I'm so glad that you didn't ask. Well, just about everything under the sun could fall under that umbrella. Intimate couples have conflicts about how to rear and discipline children, the division of household chores, money, interactions with in laws, etc. Peterson found it helpful to classify the events that instigate conflicts into 4 categories. Let's first start with criticism. Criticism involves verbal or nonverbal acts that are judged to communicate dissatisfaction with the partner's behavior, attitude, or a partner's trait. It doesn't matter what the person intended to say, but instead, what matters is how the information was interpreted. If, for example, you made a suggestion about when to pick up the children and your spouse thought it was uncalled for, then she could be viewing your remark as criticism. Illegitimate demands. This is another classification that Peterson uses. It constitutes another category that involves requests that seem unjust because they exceed normal expectations that the partners hold for each other. An example of this could be one partner working on a work project for multiple days and placing the demand of childcare on their spouse. This could foster a great deal of conflict for the burnt out spouse, even with the understanding that their partner is working on an employment related task. Moving on, rebuffs are situations in which a person appeals to another for a desired reaction and the other person fails to respond as expected. For example, if a guy asks his lady to the dance floor and she decides that she is more interested in Twitter at the moment and does not want to cut the rug, that could be a rebuff that the guy logs away and is conscious and may be linked to some ensuing conflict later on. Finally, cumulative annoyances are relatively trivial events. Think of them as social allergies. These are relatively trivial events that become irritating by repetition. Repeated exposure to small recurring nuisances cause individuals to be hypersensitive and react in disgust and exasperation that seem out of proportion to an event. An example of this can be someone belching at the dinner table or shopping too long and being inconsiderate of one's partner. If that is not directly addressed, then one could log that away in their conscious and their memory essentially. And over time, the accumulation of those offenses can give way to a larger conflict. Now, when these things happen, attribution matters. Attribution speaks to what one perceives to be the cause of the event. Given our self-serving biases, that's right, I'm admitting it in front of you, and you need to admit it to yourself. We tend to serve ourselves with our thought processes. We will judge our own attributions more favorably, and sometimes may not give our partners the benefit of the doubt due to the actor observer effect. For example, you are more likely to be angry with your partner if you think they did something intentionally to hurt you versus if you believe that it was a mistake. Couples will often argue about the causes of offensive behavior, with the victim almost always having a different understanding than the perpetrator. These arguments are usually pointless, though they may not feel like it, as there are so many subtle reasons as to why an event took place, why a behavior took place, and these reasons are so subtle that the perpetrator and the victim are not fully aware because of the self-serving biases I mentioned earlier. The victim, if angry, may be best suited to consider their partner's point of view and really ask themselves why the behavior occurred. So, as much as they can, try to compartmentalize, act like a fly on the wall, be an objective party, and really try to understand their partner's viewpoint. Now, this may help to decrease anger, and it may help individuals move the resolution much quicker. Responses to conflict are also shaped by our attributions for the event. If we think that our partners cannot change, then we're more likely to sit and stew when we think a problem is set in stone. As we sit and stew, we just become more bitter, enraged, our ire grows, and we are more discontent. When we believe our partners can change, we are more likely to express our discontent and seek constructive solutions with our partner. Now, once an instigating event occurs, partners must decide to address the issue or to avoid it and let it drop. Avoidance occurs when both partners wish to evade the issue, and it presumably happens when the issue is deemed to not warrant a dispute or when the issue seems intractable and conflict will not really do any good. In some cases, couples may try to resolve the conflict through problem solving or negotiation right at the bat. Sometimes, though, escalation occurs and the conflict heats up. Unfortunately, partners may say nasty direct and indirect things to each other. Some example of those include hostile commands and threats, sarcastic put downs, whining, smug condescension, and implied negativity. Ugh. And all of this can have extreme physical consequences on blood pressure, immune system, and other physiological components of our body. Demand withdrawal patterns may ensue when one partner demands for something to change and the other withdraws through half-hearted involvement to change, changing the topic, walking away, or avoiding conversation. And hurling negative insults can result as well, almost on a loop. All of these negative communication styles seem to be less present among couples that have secure attachment styles and more satisfying relationships. Some responses to conflict are destructive and undermine the relationship, and others are constructive and help to sustain it. When loving partners are cool headed, negotiation usually occurs. Cannery identified several things that partners can do in negotiation, and they include the following. One, show a willingness to deal with the problem by accepting responsibility or by offering concessions or compromise. Number two, exhibit support for the other's point of view by paraphrasing. This helps with avoiding mind reading. You're doing some perception checking. Number three, offering self-disclosure using I statements. I feel this when this occurs, right? I statements, XYZ statements are phenomenal here. Number four, providing approval and affection. Now, some indirect tactics can be employed as well, and these involve friendly, non sarcastic humor that lightens the mood. Keep in mind that snarky, aggressive humor that teases or ridicules others oftentimes isn't helpful, but witty, good cheer that is respectful of your partner is welcomed in conflict. So, given that we've spent so much time discussing how conflict unfolds, I want to continue this discussion on how we can resolve conflict in a successful way. I will first focus on what you should not do in a conflict according to Gottman's 1994 work. Number one, don't withdraw when your partner raises a concern or a complaint. It's fair to ask that the conversation dealing with a conflict be rescheduled for a more convenient time, but make sure you honor the appointment. Avoiding problems does not fix problems. That's number one. Number two, don't go negative. So, whether you're voicing a complaint or receiving it, now is not the time to be sarcastic, mean, and speak in contempt or disgust. Remember, in intimate relationships, bad is stronger than good. So, you got to do like five good things to wipe out the one bad thing that you did. Keep that in mind. So, in moments of conflict, it ain't the time to get mean, sarcastic, and speak in disgust. Number three, don't get caught in a loop of negative effect. If you and your partner are hurling stronger insults and accusations back and forth, then it may be time to stop. You need to take a 10-minute break, gather yourself, go on a walk, calm down, and then come back and see if you can reconcile and get some solutions to the issues at hand. In the presentation slide, I have what has been deemed to be the four horsemen of the apocalypse. There are some real spelling errors in this display, but you kind of get the gist. Gottman had identified these four key pieces that oftentimes predict relationships failing, ending prematurely, being toxic, and being destructive. So criticism, attacking partner's personality or character versus addressing behavior and talking about how you feel about their behavior. Contempt, treating your partner with disgust as if they are worthless. Being defensive, and avoiding taking responsibility, and then ultimately stonewalling, not sharing, not being open, avoiding conflict, emotionally shutting down. All these things ultimately lead to relationship failure. Heed them, and you very well may avoid an apocalypse in your intimate relationship. Another strategy that may be worth considering is the speaker listener technique. This technique provides a structure for calm, clear communication about contentious issues that promotes the usage of active listening skills and increases the chances that partners will understand and validate each other despite their disagreement. You know, misperception is often an issue that crops up in disagreements, and it can cause individuals to respond too quickly without checking their understanding of their partner's intention. So, to use this technique, let's get to the nitty gritty. The couple designates a small object as the floor, and whoever has the floor is the speaker. Now, that partner's job is to concisely describe his or her feelings using I statements, and the listener's job is to listen without interrupting and paraphrase the speaker's message. When the speaker is satisfied that his or her feelings are understood, then the floor changes hands and the partners switch roles. This pattern of careful communication allows the partners to demonstrate their concern and respect for each other's feelings without falling into this noxious cycle of self justification and mind reading, interruption, and defensiveness. This technique has actually been employed in a variety of premarital counseling programs, and it's frequently used in a variety of marital therapies. Now, there are five ways that conflicts tend to end. One way they may end involves domination. This is when one individual gets his or her way when the other partner capitulates. Domination is aversive for the loser, and it usually occurs because one partner has more power or influence than the other. Separation is another way that conflict may end. Separation occurs when both partners withdraw without resolving the conflict. Sometimes this may be beneficial as it could stave off irreparable damage to the relationship, but if perpetually done, it may just serve as a means of addressing a way of avoiding, excuse me, serious issues with the relationship and thus making it less satisfying in the long run. Compromise occurs when both parties lower their expectations or aspirations so that both parties can have what they want. In essence, both parties' interests are diluted rather than reconciled. Neither party gets everything he or she wants, but no one leaves the conflict empty handed. This may be the best result when one person's goal is at the expense or the cost of the other. Another way conflict may end involves integrative agreements. Integrative agreements solve both partners' original goals and aspirations, but these types of agreement may require some flexibility, creativity, and the invention of new ways to attain goals that do not infringe on partners. Finally, on occasion, the partners not only get what they want, but they learn and grow and make desirable changes to their relationship. So, this pleasant outcome is called structural improvement, and this may come out of significant turmoil and upheaval. These types of improvements do not happen frequently, but they may ultimately leave couples better off. So let's wrap up this presentation. The prevailing view among conflict researchers is that for all of the dilemma and drama it creates, conflict is an essential tool with which to promote intimacy. So if you strive to follow the suggestions that are listed from research dealing with relationships, you'll probably manage conflict well. Now, I'm not underestimating how hard it is to fight fair. Believe me, I know. And I'm not underestimating how hard it is to have a good fight. It requires self discipline and genuine caring about one's partner. But the positive outcomes are usually worth effort, and conflict can be viewed as a challenging opportunity to learn more about oneself and one's partner, and for a relationship to inevitably be more satisfying and intimate. So, with that said, I bid you adieu. Strive to fight fair and take care.